All right, let's talk about one of the most powerful books ever written, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Now, this isn't just a historical account of surviving the Holocaust. It's something much deeper. It's a profound psychological journey that gets to the very heart of a huge question. How do we find a reason to live, even when we're faced with the absolute worst of human suffering?
So, Frankl, who was a psychiatrist, would often hit his patients with this incredibly jarring question right out of the gate. And yeah, it sounds harsh, right? But the genius behind it was that their answer, whatever they clung to, maybe it was a child they loved, a book they needed to write, or just a precious memory, that answer became the very thread he could use to help them weave their life back together. It was the starting point for everything.
You see, Frankl's ideas, his entire philosophy, it wasn't developed in some cozy academic setting. No, it was forged and tested in the most brutal laboratory imaginable, the Nazi concentration camps. This was where his theories about meaning and survival were put to the ultimate, horrifying test.
So, in 1942, Frankl, along with his wife and his parents, were all deported. He ended up at Auschwitz, a place that was basically synonymous with death. A place where, let's be honest, the chances of surviving even your first few hours were almost zero.
When they first arrived, Frankl noticed that many prisoners held on to what he called the delusion of reprieve, a desperate hope that things might not be so bad. They'd see prisoners who looked healthy, not realizing they were a select few with special jobs. An SS officer would stand there, casually pointing people either to the left or to the right, a simple flick at a finger, but it was a sentence of life or death. For 90% of the people on that transport, the finger pointed left, towards a building with a sign that said bath. They were in the gas chamber within hours.
Now, for the very few who survived that first terrible selection, a whole new ordeal began. It was a process of systematically breaking them down, of stripping away every single piece of their identity until they were left with what Frankl called a naked existence. And I mean, they took everything. Your clothes, your wedding ring, pictures of your family, your hair, even your name was gone. All your papers were confiscated. Your entire life, your whole identity, was just erased. And it was replaced by a number tattooed right onto your skin.
This was Viktor Frankl. This number was his new name. For 3 long years, he wasn't Dr. Frankl, the respected psychiatrist. He wasn't a husband or a son. He was just prisoner number 119104. And this is where things get really interesting psychologically. When you've lost literally everything, there's this weird shift. Frankl talks about this strange, grim sense of humor taking over, this cold, detached curiosity. It's like, well, what else can they do to me now? You realize there's nothing left to lose.
Frankl noticed that everyone in the camp went through 3 basic psychological phases. First, there was the initial shock of it all. But you couldn't live in that state, so you quickly entered phase 2, apathy. It was this emotional death, a total blunting of your feelings. And it's so important to get this. That apathy wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a crucial self-defense mechanism. It was the only way to build a shell to survive the day-to-day horror.
But it was right there, in the absolute depths of that misery and dehumanization, that Frankl made a discovery that would literally change psychology. He realized that even when they take everything from you, there is one thing, one final thing, that can never be taken away.
He was a big fan of this quote from the philosopher Nietzsche, and this idea became his lifeline. He saw it with his own eyes. The prisoners who had the best chance of survival weren't necessarily the physically strongest. They were the ones who had a why, a reason to keep going, a future goal to accomplish, a loved one to see again, something to live for.
This was Frankl's huge insight. The guards could control his body. They could starve him, they could beat him, but they couldn't touch his mind. He and others discovered they could retreat from the filth and the pain into this rich inner world, a world of memory, of spiritual freedom, where they could find beauty in something as simple as a sunset seen through barbed wire. He tells this incredible story of being on a forced march in the freezing cold, barely able to put one foot in front of the other. And he just started thinking about his wife. He pictured her face, he imagined her smile, he heard her voice. And in that moment, he felt this incredible warmth. And it hit him. The salvation of man is through love. He didn't even know if she was still alive at that point, but it didn't matter. Love was a force that went beyond physical presence. The thought of her, the love he carried inside, that's what gave him the strength to go on.
And this
Right here is the single most important takeaway from the entire book. Everything can be stripped away from you, your job, your home, your family, your health. But that one last thing, the ultimate human freedom, can never be taken. The power to choose your own attitude, your own response to whatever life throws at you. Even in the worst possible situation, you still get to decide who you are going to be. So, Frankl takes this earth-shattering personal discovery and turns it into a framework to help other people. These horrific experiences in the camps became the foundation for his own school of psychotherapy, which he called logotherapy. So you have Freud, who said we're all driven by a will to pleasure. Then you have Adler, who said it's a will to power. Frankl came along and said, no, you're both wrong. The primary motivation for human beings is a will to meaning. And so logotherapy doesn't endlessly dig around in your past. It's forward-looking. It's all about helping you find the meaning that's waiting for you to fulfill in your future. Now, Frankl isn't trying to give you a cheap, easy answer for why bad things happen. He's saying that suffering is just an unavoidable part of being human. You can't escape it. So the real challenge isn't how to avoid suffering, it's how to find meaning in it. The way we face our challenges, the way we bear our cross, that gives us an incredible opportunity to add a deeper meaning to our lives, to turn tragedy into a personal triumph. So how do we actually do that? How do we find meaning? Frankl lays out 3 main avenues. The first is pretty straightforward, creating something or doing a deed, having a mission. The second is by experiencing something or loving someone. And the third path, well, this is the deepest one. It's found in the attitude we choose to take when we're facing suffering we simply cannot change. The lessons that Frankl learned in the absolute worst of circumstances, they contain some incredibly powerful wisdom for our own lives, which, let's face it, are far, far easier. I love this bit of advice from him. It's kind of a paradox. He says, don't even try to aim for success or happiness, because the more you chase them, the more you'll miss them. Instead, he says, just forget about yourself. Dedicate your life to a cause that's bigger than you are, or give yourself over to another person. If you do that, success and happiness will just happen. They'll show up as an unintended side effect. This all leads to his idea of tragic optimism. And it's not some naive, everything is great kind of optimism. Not at all. It's a tough, resilient kind of hope. It's the ability to say yes to life in spite of all of it, in spite of the pain, the guilt, and the fact that we're all going to die. It's our incredible human capacity to turn suffering into a genuine human achievement. And so that brings us right back to where we started. Back to that question Frankl would ask his patients, and the question his book leaves for every single one of us. He proved that it's possible to find meaning even in the darkest, most hopeless place on Earth. And so, the only real question left is, where are you going to find yours?